Hi, my name's David from Gold Coast Institute of TAFE, and today I want to take you through my digital content leading practice program, which involved creating some content writers templates and some examples using the action mapping process. What I've done is created basically a research document inside Microsoft Word. I'm going to run through this document and just speak through some of the features while showing you some of the examples that I've created. So I did base the document and the layout, I guess, on a research project. So a similar template to what we would have used in university when doing some educational research. And you can see those topics that I've broken it down to there. So a bit of background information. This is part of the QVDC funded Digital Content Leading Practice program. And the aim for me was to create a template that we could use here at the GCIT. Our current templates really are based on textbook style. So what you'll see is some objectives, some content, some self-check questions, a bit more content, a bit more questions, and then a summary. Once that basic content was created, then the interactive activities, the multimedia resources are added by our instructional designers and multimedia technicians. So what I wanted to do was basically try to flip that around and try to build some actions into the content right at the start. The DCLP project was great because it let me get away from day-to-day operational activities and actually work on this project separate to those day-to-day tasks. What we're finding is that as our online courses get developed more and we're getting more and more students online, we really want to break new ground in the way that those are designed, and I guess the experience of the student needs to continually be made better. So action mapping is what I've based the project on. So this is something that Kathy Moore devised, and we can see a bit of a summary there that I grabbed from another website. So it's really a visual approach to deciding on performance, not information. So again, the focus is on what people need to do, not what they need to know. And this is a bit of a change from what we sometimes see in e-learning. And I guess the second thing there, it has to be measurable. And this is really tough, and I guess in my examples I haven't quite nailed the measurable part of the aims, but we'll see how that goes. And action mapping should use activities that reflect what happens inside the business or job behaviour. And then we need to, put those activities into the work situation so that the students are asked to make decisions like they would in the real life situation. And we need to create activities that students can fail so they can learn from their mistakes. And it can be summarized into 4 simple steps. So identify the business goal, identify what learners need to do, design the activities that mirror what they need to do in the real world, and then decide on what learners really need to know to carry out those steps. And here's that displayed visually. So right in the center, and the very first thing that you do is decide on the measurable goal. Then the next thing you would do, you can see by the green triangles, is decide on the job behaviors that will actually reach that measurable goal. Then create or decide some realistic practice activities for that job behavior, and then present only the information that's relevant for that particular activity. And of course I've created some example content which will see that implemented. So there are some steps there, and what I wanted to do as part of the project was have a look at how we could integrate this into the processes at GCIT. So I guess I've broken these steps down and given a little bit of information about each. So setting the goal. In the original Kathy Moore article, it was really about setting a measurable business goal. We've had to adapt that for vocational education, and I think using the training package, the unit of competency, and of course going down to the element of performance criteria will give you that goal. And as I've said there, if assessment's been previously designed or there's a unit assessment plan, you might be able to use that or talk to your subject matter expert or the teacher involved. So identifying the job behaviours. Ideally your subject matter expert, the content writer or teacher will give you those, But what I've found is some questions that can be asked of the subject matter expert to really identify those behaviours. And you can see those listed there. What are the areas of confusion? What are the common questions that the teacher might get about those topics? What are the common mistakes that you see people make out in the workplace? What's the most dangerous mistake? What's the biggest gaps? Where might there be some resistance or pushback? So if students are already set in their ways, where are you going to find those? And the last question there, what do they need to know cold? So if you stopped them and said, do you know this? They'd have to be able to answer it without even blinking. So brainstorming the practice activities. So it might well look like the diagram that we saw in the action mapping process. And you also need to, consider the delivery method. So is it going to be a practical based observed activity, or is it going to be purely online using a simulation? Is it going to be a series of questions? There's a couple of different ways you could brainstorm those activities, and what I grabbed was a couple of storyboard style templates. So if it's going to be a choose your own adventure style story, you might be able to use something like this style template, or something like this. I guess one of the points that I found was these can be, even something that looks as simple as this could be confusing to a teacher or content writer. One technique we've tried here is using a screenshot of the final e-learning product, sticking that in PowerPoint, and then letting your content writers or instructional designers put the text onto the PowerPoint. The multimedia technician would then take it and turn it into proper HTML or web pages or whatever it's going to be. And I guess branching activities can also be prototyped in PowerPoint using the internal hyperlinks. And that's a tool that teachers are very comfortable and familiar with, and wouldn't be too hard to adapt your current processes to. So identifying the necessary info. You'll see that this is step 4. Generally, or traditionally, this is the first step that's done in content design, and that's how you get your information dump. We write out all of the possible content that could cover all the unit criteria, and then we go back and check those things. So again, I've found some questions there that can be used with your subject matter expert or your teacher to try to narrow down that necessary information. And what I've done with this page here, using the roles that we have here at GCIT, tried to set out who might be involved in those particular goals. So you've got your client, which might not be the teacher, it could well be the educational manager or just the proponent of the project. You've got your educational and instructional designers, your subject matter experts, teachers, and interestingly enough involving the learner at some stage, so getting some students to try out some of the content that you've created or having a look at some of the activities, and of course the multimedia technician. And that was adapted from something from Kathy Moore. So when I looked at the action mapping process, I thought, well, it doesn't quite fit into a nice template. So I decided to have a look at some instructional events, and of course Ganji's 9 instructional events are widely accepted, and you can see those there: gaining attention, describing the goal, stimulating prior knowledge, presenting the material, guidance, getting performance, giving feedback, assessing, and enhancing retention and transfer. And the other one that's of interest to me is the Madeline Hunter direct instruction model. Very similar, giving an anticipatory set or a hook for the students, and I think this is important in the e-learning world, giving them some sort of interesting story or something relevant to the workplace to get them interested before giving them the standard dot points of objectives or standards that they need to follow. Giving them some teaching or modelling, guided practice, checking their understanding, allowing for independent practice, and then some sort of closure. So in conjunction with brainstorming the activities using the action mapping process, and then having a look at some sort of instructional model or instructional events, we should be able to make self-contained learning content that is relevant, meaningful, and in some ways represents or I guess transfers from that face-to-face teaching environment that we're all quite familiar with into a set of instructions or some content for the students. So here at GCIT we've been using the Wimber templates, so Course Genie style stuff, to allow our content writers and teachers to get their stuff together. So what we can see here is the Course Genie styles in conjunction with the instructional events that make a template. So the content writer should be able to have a look at this information and then delete what's there and put in relevant content. And of course they're going to be doing this after they've done the action map. So you do your action mapping process first and then have a look at this style template to get the information down. I use this one because it's our current process, and what you'll see by my example is even though we've used the Course Genie templates and styles, it doesn't need to be punched out using the Course Genie or the Wimber Create software. I'm not going to go through this word by word. I do have a copy of this available on the cloud via my SkyDrive, which we can all download, and it'll also be in the my.tafe site for those directly involved in the project. So a lot of this is the same sort of information that was in the instructional events. Then what I set out to do was to create some example content. So the first one I used was the Use Business Technology. This was a unit that I used to teach. So here's an example of an action mapping template or action mapping process that I used for the Select Appropriate Technology and Software Applications. I'm just going to go through these quite quickly. I've only got a few minutes left of my 15 minutes. So here's a pretty good example where I've used a couple of objectives. You can see then the job activities, the simulated tasks, and then the information that would be required for that. And again, some more OH&S style stuff, so adjusting the workspace. Again, looking at those tasks, setting up the PC and printer, be presented with a virtual workstation and given a brochure for that. And another there. So if I have a look at the actual content that was created at the end of that, I used iBooks, had a look at it on the iPad, and I've just taken some screenshots. So the content is quite light. And it's all about the activities, so comparing the word processes, deciding for yourself, checking your understanding, and then on to the next topic. And as I say, I'll give you the links to these documents so you can look through them at your own time. So here's our marking tests and assessments in my.tafe, so I used that as well. This is something that I'm teaching currently. I do it on a regular basis and it needed reworking. So again, what we're looking at here is the core objective, the tasks that teachers need to do, the activities that they'll be required to do, and the information that's given to them. And same thing there. I wonder if I can zoom in a little bit for you. So it already had some resources. So what we'll see if we look closely is that the content on the left hand side, or the menus, will reflect those learning objectives. I've used videos and screenshots, so again I tried to be quite light on the content, but very accurate in what they needed to know and very well defined based on that action map. I've just taken those screenshots. Unfortunately, I won't be able to give access to everyone to this part of my.tafe, but we have got these examples we can look at. And of course all the questions and things that I created, the actual test for them, was based on that action mapping as well. So I only questioned them on the information that was relevant. And we can see those there. So where to from here? I guess for me, the information that I gathered and created was all done by myself. Normally it's a collaborative process here at GCIT, so the real test will be when we start using this action mapping template. It's going to be included in our Content Writers Handbook. I've done a survey. Oh, look at that. Isn't that great?